Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're discussing ways how and why the Precursors will have significant effects on the Halo universe very soon. So before we start, as per usual, don't forget to leave a like. Let's aim for 500. So if you want to catch up on the history of the Precursors and the only named Precursor that we know, the Primordial, you can click on both of these videos on screen right now to get caught up. So the Precursors are long since gone, fleeing from the Forerunners' betrayal. However, the Forerunners eventually stumbled upon a precursor known as the Primordial, and during its interrogation by the Didact, it shed light on the distant future and specified that humanity will face a final test for the mantle of responsibility. It was long ago decided, Forerunners will never bear the mantle. Decided how? Through long study, the decision is final. Humans will replace you. Humans will be tested next. Is that to be our punishment? It is the way of those who seek out the truth of the mantle. Humans will rise again in arrogance and defiance. The flood will return when they are ripe, and bring them unity. So, let's break down this excerpt between the Primordial and the Didact, and what it could mean for humanity's final test. First off, the Primordial shatters all the Forerunners' expectations that they're the rightful holders of the mantle, and that they'll hold it for eternity, forever being the rulers of the galaxy and its species, which, as you can imagine, was absolutely crushing for the Didact. Secondly, he reveals that the humans will replace the Forerunners in due time, and will be the next species to be tested for the mantle. Now, this came as a surprise to the Didact, as he and the Forerunners only recently defeated ancient humanity, and likely assumed that they would hold the mantle for eternity. Now, what the Primordial says next is super important when it comes to talking about the Precursors' final test, and how it's going to affect the galaxy very soon. First off, it says that humans will rise again in arrogance and defiance. Now, if I were to choose two adjectives to best describe post-Human Covenant War humanity, it'd be arrogant and defiant. From small acts of arrogance, such as Infinity smashing through that Covenant cruiser, and the general sort of persona and character of the Spartan 4s, to the larger acts of defiance, such as humanity not even considering falling in line behind Cortana and the Created. The way the Primordial describes humanity when they're to be tested is almost identical to how they currently are in 2558. You can also bet your bottom dollar that once we inevitably defeat the Created, these traits will only be exacerbated even more, because humanity's ego is going to expand to a galactic scale. The Primordial also suggests that humanity will have surpassed the Forerunners when they're to be tested. We've already defeated arguably the most important warrior servant in the Forerunner Ecumene, twice. And now, I'm not saying the Didact is gone forever, as I've explained in many videos before, he's very likely not. But either way, humanity has defeated the face of the Forerunner military twice. We're now facing off against the Created, and let's be honest, does anyone really think at the end of the Created story arc that humanity's gonna lose? I mean, I think everyone kind of knows in the back of their head that we're gonna defeat them, and seeing as the Created is technically a Forerunner force, it's just going to be another instance to add to the list of the many times that we've defeated the Forerunners. So after defeating them at least 3 times, you'd think that we'd have technically surpassed them. Now, there is always the chance that the Primordial meant this in terms of technology and species advancement, which is something that we're eons behind the Forerunners on, but thinking realistically, if 343 ever want to include the Precursors in the games in the 26th century and not have a massive time skip, they won't have this mean this. However, the last sentence in the Primordial speech is where we get the bulk of information about humanity's imminent test. It says that the Flood will return when they are ripe. Now, this could be taken as the original Flood force that returned to the galaxy during the Human Covenant War, but that was just really a containment breach on Installation 04 that was able to escalate and grow way too much due to nobody at the time really knowing what the Flood was or how to deal with it in any way. The word ripe suggests that they're sort of evolved to a peak strength, to their highest physical forms. Now, this means that when they eventually return, the Flood that we'll be fighting will not only contain the usual combat forms, infection forms, and carrier forms, but likely far more pure forms like the Tank, Ranger, and Stalker. They'll also likely come from other galaxies that were totally 100% engulfed by the Flood many millennia ago, that have since been used as a pure breeding ground and evolution base for them. That leads to some pretty grim prospects. Now, the last part of this sentence is really interesting. And bring them unity. Now, I interpret this two different ways. Number one, the Flood will infect the entirety of humanity along with the other races in the galaxy that are lower than them in the sort of race importance hierarchy, so elites, brutes, jackals, grunts, etc. So they'll all be unified into one race, the Flood. Or two, the return of the Flood will make all of the races in the galaxy that are at war with each other realise that the Flood isn't just a threat to them or their opposition, but more so a threat to the entire galaxy and the future as they know it, which is going to cause them hopefully to lay down their arms against each other and unify into one massive galactic force and attempt to drive the Flood back. Now, even though I personally interpret this two ways, and I'm sure many other people do too, it's extremely likely that the Primordial actually meant both interpretations to be true, as they do both make sense. The Flood win, unify all the races, and humanity fails the test for the mantle. Or, humanity unites all of the races in the galaxy that they were previously at war with, creates a galactic military union and defeats the Flood, claiming the mantle and proving they're fit to hold responsibility over all of the other races in the galaxy. Sort of like a galactic parent. So, when is this test going to occur? Likely after the creator's story arc is finished, but I actually have an idea specifically laid out as to how this could play out. Okay, so close your eyes and imagine it's the final cutscene in Halo 6 or whatever Halo game. Chief finally defeats Cortana by severing the last tie the galaxy has to the domain, making it completely inaccessible, therefore trapping everything inside it in nothingness. But Cortana's logic plague has already reached a point where it had gotten her to near imprison the entire galaxy on their home planets, making them really weak and unarmed. As Chief says his final emotional goodbye to Cortana as she's lost in this nothingness that's the domain, thousands upon thousands of slipspace portals open up in the sky, and out come millions of Flood-controlled ships that belong to races that nobody even knew existed. And all while this is going on, this section of the Halo 3 soundtrack, Gravemind plays, remastered but still recognisable. Then bam! Cliffhanger. Satisfying, resolute, but a steep cliff leading to the next game. Now finally, setting all that fanfiction aside, I want to touch on one last thing that could come through the portal leading this insanely big Flood force. The Precursors. They wouldn't be the true Precursors, because if they were, they wouldn't be leading the Flood, rather the Precursors who ground themselves down into the corrupted dust in their resurrected form would be leading the Flood. Something between a Gravemind and a Precursor. Reason being, it's their test for humanity, as the corrupted versions of the Seeders and arguably the Overlords of the galaxy, it's their test that they're placing on humanity, so, I mean, it only seems right that they're the ones to overwatch it and see how it plays out. And hey, seeing as they're corrupted, maybe they'll even be an enemy at some point. I sure as hell would like to see how 343 managed to balance the gameplay of fighting a Precursor. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to leave your thoughts on the Precursor's final test and what it's going to bring in the comments down below. Next time, we're going to be returning to the Halo 5 Legendary ending, and we're going to be discussing why Cortana needs a Halo ring. I'll see you then.